If supervillains were real, where would they live? If you guessed a random parking lot, you'd be right. Attack of the Mutant. This is your per video reminder to like and subscribe if you enjoy my stuff. Thank you. First is the original Jacobus cover, one of my favorites. The masked mutant is front and center with a classic 90s ultra-muscular design. In the background you'll notice his lair, a pink and green fire hydrant which at least stands out, despite its ugliness. Our tagline is, "He's no superhero, he's a supervillain." The back says, "Read at your own risk." Next is the 2000s reprint, zoomed in as you know, with a purple slime color instead of orange. Lastly is our UK cover. The mutant has a completely unique design. It makes me think that none of these UK covers use the Jacobus covers as inspiration. He looks like an old man with like 4 total teeth. No collections or adaptations left, except for one special thing we'll be covering soon. Before that though, time for the summary. Skipper is a kid who's obsessed with collecting comic books. He's a bit of a dick already. His main concern is just the value. He makes a few completely wrong statements to his friend. Issue zeros are worth a ton more than issue 1. Second printings are worthless. His books from the 90s will be worth millions in 20 years. Yeah, he's a tad misguided. People who only pick up hobbies for value piss me off. Slight rant aside, Skipper does at least read one comic book he buys. A brown envelope sits on his dresser, and his parents told him not to open it until after homework is done. But he has to. So he pulls open the envelope and pulls out this month's issue of The Masked Mutant, number 24. A tight squeeze for the sensational Sponge. It's the only time in this book he mentions the hero named Sponge Life, which is just a horrible name. But this ongoing series is actually about the Masked Mutant, the biggest villain in the comic universe. He has the power to shapeshift into anything, so keep that in mind. The Justice League of this book is called the League of Good Guys, led by Galloping Gazelle, the fastest man in the universe. However, the Masked Mutant always gets away, so with all that comic book exposition over with, Skipper gets way too into his issue. The Masked Mutant is an octopus squeezing his tentacles around Sponge Life, then Skipper feels a tentacle around his neck. As expected, this is our annoying younger sibling character. This time it's Skipper's sister Mitzi. Her hands were cold because she put them in the fridge just to mess with him. That and she had to come up to make sure Skipper was doing his homework, Dad's orders. It seems like he isn't, and he tries to make excuses, but then Dad comes in. "I'm tossing all these things out." Skipper isn't worried though. Dad does this a lot. He always threatens to take them away but never goes through with it. He doesn't think all these comic books are healthy, but he isn't doing shit. So as soon as he leaves, Skipper goes right back to the comic. He quickly realizes though that if he keeps reading, Mitzi will come in, see it, and he might actually face some consequences for once. So he finishes his homework, poorly, but at least it's done. When he gets back to the comic, Sponge Life escapes as expected, and it ends with the Masked Mutant escaping to his headquarters. This is big, because in 24 issues, they've somehow never shown his lair before. It looks like a giant pink and green fire hydrant, which is ugly as hell, but then again, how brilliant. No one would ever suspect this is his headquarters. In the end, a shadowed figure appears before the Masked Mutant at his HQ, but Skipper knows it's the Galloping Gazelle. But how could he be there? What a cliffhanger. A few days later, Skipper takes the city bus to his orthodontist. He actually takes the bus because there's a comic shop on the way, then he walks the rest of the way to the doctor. And so begins the most frightening adventure of Skipper's life. No, seriously, he says that at the end. Skipper sits down on the bus and gets lost in thought until a girl interrupts him. She asks about what school he goes to and laughs at him for being named Skipper. This is where we learn that Skipper's real name is Bradley, but apparently when he was little, he used to skip everywhere, and now he's stuck as Skipper forever. This girl is Libby, and she asks where Skipper's heading. He hides his orthodontist appointment by saying he's going to the comic shop, but get this, she collects comics too! High School Harry and Beanhead. Basically this world's equivalent to Archie and Jughead. Skipper says those comics are for babies and worthless compared to his epic superhero books. She says she doesn't even like to sell, just read, and he calls her a fake collector. This kid is a dick. Buy comics to read, people, not to flip. Unfortunately, they've been flirting so long that Skipper completely missed his stop. He gets off the bus and sees Libby's there too. This is conveniently also her stop. Skipper turns around to leave, but then he sees the impossible. A building on the corner. The Masked Mutants HQ! Skipper's jaw is sufficiently dropped, and Libby goes on about how ugly the thing is. Apparently her family moved in last spring and it's been there since. So the Masked Mutants HQ has been sitting blocks away from Skipper and he never knew. Skipper starts to blush and lets out that he has to go to his appointment, which Libby doesn't even grill him about, and she leaves. He runs across the street and sneaks his way towards the HQ. He looks in through the window, but no one's there. Should he go in? Then the bus pulls up again. He's got to get to his appointment. Boo! A rare moment of responsibility. At school the next day, Skipper's at lunch with his irrelevant friend Wilson. He has a simple explanation for the headquarters being there. The illustrator was probably in town one day, saw the building, and thought, that thing is so damn weird, I gotta use that in my comic book. It's an outlandish assumption, but way more realistic than an actual supervillain in town, so Skipper goes home disappointed. A week later, he finally gets to go to the building again. He wants to walk in and ask what the building's for out of curiosity, I suppose. He tries to find Libby on the bus, but doesn't see her. He makes it to the corner, and when he looks up, the building is gone. Another bus pulls up behind Skipper, and Libby comes out. He asks where it went, so Libby thinks they tore it down, but she hasn't seen any equipment at all. Then she asks why he even cares, so Skipper blurts out that it's in a comic book. In a daze, he goes to Libby's house to look at her collection of shitty high school Harry and Beanhead books, then he goes home dejected. At home, a new envelope's here, the latest issue of The Masked Mutant. He immediately rips it open to see the mutant himself, saying the heroes will never find him now that he's put an invisibility curtain around his HQ. No flippin' way. Is the comic book and the real life the same thing? Not to say that the book is boring, but the more I read these, the more I pick up on what's just padding I don't need to tell you guys about. Take this chapter for example. A few paragraphs dedicated to telling us about how Skipper went to the mall to buy some new sneakers, and while he usually buys expensive ones, he didn't today because he's too anxious about the building, and his mom lectures him about comic books. Two things we already know, but I guess kids need a bit more help with the plot. Anyway, Skipper makes his way back to the building the next day, finding Libby on the bus. She listens to his entire insane hypothesis and makes fun of him as expected, but of course she follows him towards the empty lot. They take a few small steps and then the building comes into view. It's real! Should they go in? Yes. The lobby's enormous with pink and yellow walls, and the only thing in there is a set of elevators on the far wall. Skipper takes a step forward and a beam of light shoots out, rolling over his body as if he were being downloaded into the grid. It's over in seconds, but Libby doesn't notice it. Weird. Libby's scared shitless of this place and she really wants to leave, but Skipper's determined to ride the elevator. She relents and goes with him out of fear? Interest? Curiosity? She at least says she's doing it out of pity. The elevator opens and Skipper decides to hit the top floor button. It starts moving, fast, but it's going down. The elevator lands with a hard thud and the kids panic as the door won't open, until Skipper notices a dedicated open button for the elevator. How annoying. They exit out into what seems like a basement. Plenty of pipes and the sounds of heavy machinery. They get back in the elevator and try to go back to the lobby, but it doesn't work. They spam the lobby and emergency buttons a couple of times, but it must be busted. In a moment of clarity, they remember the lobby had tons of elevators, so if they just take another one, maybe that'll work instead. So they leave, and the elevator closes behind them. They hear it rise and look around to see that that was the only elevator on the floor. Well, that doesn't make much sense. Perhaps each elevator leads to a different floor, and it's just the illusion of choice. The kids slowly make their way through the basement, finding a hallway leading to a bunch of doors. He peeks through one after another until finding another enormous empty room with a control panel. Nobody's there despite stools being set up, and so Skipper calls out to Libby, but she's not there. He starts to freak out. He checks every single door looking for her, and finds another hallway leading to yet another enormous room. This one is extremely bright, floodlights pointing towards a huge machine in the center, a printing press. The floor is littered with trashed paper, and Skipper looks around frantically until he turns around to see the Masked Mutant! A drawing of the Masked Mutant on big poster board. Now intrigued, he starts leafing through the inked paper scattered on the ground. A bunch of drawings and sketches, mostly of the Masked Mutant. A folder for the League of Good Guys, another for completely new characters. Skipper starts to think, this building must really be the comic company that makes the Masked Mutant. He has a fun time going through each of the folders until he reaches the last one. It's full of sketches of him! He's stunned. It looks exactly like him, but that can't be. How could the artist be drawing him, and how do they know every detail? Then footsteps from behind. It's Libby. Somehow she's been just as lost looking for Skipper as he was for looking for her. It's not too important. Libby found some more elevators and she's not too interested in those detailed drawings of Skipper. They both ride to the lobby and finally leave the building. When Skipper gets home, his irrelevant friend Wilson shows him more of his rubber stamp collection. Skipper explains the entire plot so far, which Wilson has trouble comprehending, and after dinner, he leaves. Almost minuscule enough to be called filler. Skipper sees yet another envelope downstairs. The newest issue. The cover says, "A new foe for the masked mutant." The pages show someone approaching the mutant's HQ, clad in shadows. It's him! Cut in through scenes of Skipper sneaking through the halls is the Galloping Gazelle, trapped by the mutant in a room set to boil him alive. For now, though, Skipper's so excited about being in the book he tries to show his parents. While Mom admits that the kid does look a bit like him, Skipper being in the book is just too crazy to believe. He speed reads to the end of the issue. Masked Mutant is gloating about his victory, but a thought bubble above Gazelle's head says, "Only the boy can save me now." For real? He has to go back? The next day, Skipper runs to the bus stop, telling Wilson to F off and being glad that Libby isn't on the bus to make fun of him. As he returns yet again to the HQ, he makes his way inside, but just as he's about to enter the elevator, a laugh from behind. Skipper spins around, but no one's there. The laughter repeats softly, and he just assumes it must be coming from a loudspeaker above the elevator. Whatever. He calls the elevator and it arrives. He thinks, well, last time it went down when I pushed up, so what if I... Before he can push anything, though, the elevator starts to rise, all the way to floor 46. The entire hallway before him is black and white. It's almost as if it's an inked scene before the colorist, adds color to the comic book. Skipper even says that outright, because in the latest issue, these hallways were both colored and filled with various villains. Perhaps it's unfinished? Skipper starts to hear a thumping noise, and when he turns the corner, he's surprised to see the hall is now completely colored in. As you may expect, the plot is nearby. The thumping is coming from a nearby door with a metal bolt on it. Skipper chokes out a kind question. "Anyone in there?" A man inside asks for help, and Skipper's surprised the metal bolt lifts easily. He opens the door and... My God, the Galloping Gazelle. He's real! Skipper has to deal with being dazed at all these sudden realizations, and the pleas of Gazelle to help him get untied. Some Golden Era comic hijinks ensue. Gazelle asks what kind of power Skipper used to find the HQ, to which he says, "I just took the bus." Gazelle says that despite his dino legs making him the fastest on Earth, he'll take it slow. Then he doesn't. They have to take the stairs, and Gazelle points out a disintegrator ray. If Skipper doesn't jump right to the third step, he's getting atomized. Now, throughout the book, they've made it clear Skipper is pretty overweight, so when he takes his turn, he falls flat on the first step. Nothing happens, though. In another twist of fate, it seems the masked mutant didn't turn the ray on today. Gazelle leads the way to a huge boss fight-worthy room. Velvet couches, huge sparkling chandeliers, gold-plated furniture. Then Gazelle just starts gloating about his speed. He'll run around and make a tornado, and Mutant only caught him because he was sleeping. He also says he runs the 100-meter dash in a tenth of a second, and that would be an Olympic record, but they don't let me in the Olympics because I'm a mutant. Who gives a shit? They both watch as the gold-plated desk in the center of the room transforms into the masked mutant. What an inconspicuous yet gaudy transformation that is. Ho ho ho, the battle begins. But first, the mutant says, "Watch me kill the kid!" Skipper freezes in fear, then Gazelle moves in front. "You'll have to take me out first." And then Mutant just agrees. So much for a cliffhanger. Gazelle starts to run around the mutant, creating a tornado just as he said, but then the mutant uses the oldest trick in the book. He sticks his foot out to trip him. It knocks his ass out. Mutant transforms into a leopard and begins mauling Gazelle as if this were a nature documentary, all the while Skipper is begging for Gazelle to wake up. When he does, he says, "I'm out of here. You're on your own, kid." And then he dips. Well then, the fastest man alive is a coward, and he left a kid to die. Quite the hero. On a similar note, like Gazelle, Mutant starts asking Skipper what his superpowers are. He says he doesn't have any, but the mutant takes that as him hiding what it is, and moves into destroy him, the most kid-friendly word we could use for this book. The mutant grabs Skipper in his arms and starts extending them until Skipper is suspended close to the ceiling, a near 20-foot drop if he falls, which is exactly what the mutant's planning, until someone else arrives. Libby? With this distraction, the mutant calmly lowers Skipper to the ground. She looks right at Skipper and yells at him for not hearing her tail behind him earlier. She seems completely unfazed that the masked mutant is right there, until he speaks up. Now she's scared. But what do? She has an idea. She pulls out a little toy gun from her backpack. The idea is, if this is a comic book, then the limit of what's possible is only your imagination. She tells the mutant it's actually a molecule melter, and points it towards him. He inches closer, and when Libby pulls the trigger, it makes a weird whistling noise. The mutant keeps walking closer, but then he stops. A bright light envelops him, and he actually starts to melt. Libby walks over and kicks the mutant's now empty costume. She seems awfully confident in how that worked. Skipper's really confused now. He goes to leave, but Libby blocks his path and points the gun at him. I'm not Libby. There is no Libby. She begins to change into the masked mutant. Yeah, Skipper, that girl you flirted with, who held your hand and told you about how she loved bootleg Archie comics, it was me, a fully grown man all along. Well, this is awkward, but what about the other masked mutant? Well, see, that was actually the Magnificent Molecule Man. He worked for the mutant, and sometimes the mutant makes him dress up like him for deception purposes. And the reason he melted him? Well, he's a villain. Right, so the mutant is just comically, get it, evil. The mutant can't just let Skipper leave, because he has to stay here and be part of his story. It's so hard to get new characters, so when he found out how dedicated Skipper was to his story, he thought, perfect, a new victim. But this can't be, Skipper says. You're a comic book, and I'm a real boy. Nuh-uh. Another twist. Mutant says, unfortunately, it's true. Skipper's no longer a real person. Earlier, remember when Skipper came into the HQ and felt that beam of light scan over him? That scanned his body and completely transformed him into living dots of ink. But too much exposition. He's got to kill Skipper now for the next issue. But wait, Skipper says, I'm not Skipper Matthews. I'm the Colossal Elastic Boy. I knew it, says the mutant, and so begins the weirdest half-real, half-fake game of superhero roleplay there is. Skipper says there's only one way his invincible rubber body can be destroyed. What's that? Sulfuric acid? Did I just say that out loud? And so the mutant becomes a wave of acid. Skipper narrowly dodges and the mutant seeps into the carpet. Huzzah! He defeated the mutant. Apparently, Skipper knew in the comics that if the mutant ever turns into a liquid, he can't reform. Oh, well, that's great to know now. And the Elastic Boy thing? He just made that up. There's no Colossal Elastic Boy. The mutant's just really fond of roleplay, it seems. Skipper heads back home, glad to be alive, and even ignores the newest issue for the time being. He decides to have fun with his sister for once, and then they share some chocolate cake. Skipper goes to cut a slice, but the knife slips and cuts him right open. He looks down to see what else but ink! Cool! What, did you think the mutant was lying? I'll admit, as a comic collector myself, I'm a bit of a sucker for a story like this. There are some really interesting ideas floating around, like the comic world being part of the real world, the ability to be turned into a fake comic book character, and whatnot. So much of it remains unexplained, though, like, does the masked mutant run the entire thing? Did he create all of the heroes and villains in his own comic just to have some adversaries? Going deeper, the mutant could be a complex character, but I guess we'll never know. The book isn't without its plenty downsides, though. A lot of it felt like filler. This is one of the first books where not a single friend or sibling was relevant at all, and nothing matters except for when he's in that damn building. So all in all, some great ideas, but a boring hill to climb to get to them. Can the television episode hone in on these good ideas, though? Attack of the Mutant is actually a two-part episode, which I hope means more superhero action. It immediately starts with a close-up on the most recent issue of The Masked Mutant, which Skipper is reading while kicking his feet up in the air. Mom comes in, and she's a very passive woman in this episode. Don't know how else to describe it, she just feels a bit too submissive. In any case, Dad comes in to yell at Skipper for not doing his homework, and the family goes to eat dinner, but then... Well, so it seems we have an entirely new explanation for what's going on here. Wilson's new hobby in this episode is rock collection, and the masked mutant is stalking Skipper from this really easy to see through bush. On the bus, there's an ad for Goosebumps, and oh my goodness, the masked mutant! Skipper meets Libby, just like the book, and she seems quite interested in him. Skipper gets off at, I assume, the wrong stop, and then, oh my goodness! That's the most out-of-place thing I've ever seen! It seems the mutant's favorite thing to do is breathe. Ignoring Wilson again, Dad catches Skipper reading algebra? Hiding a comic in your math book. Classic. Skipper returns to the now invisible building, and this random old guy shows up to talk shit.
This stuff will rot your mind.
When he gets home, we learn that in this version, Mom is as obsessed with romance novels as Skipper is with comics. A special edition comes through the mail, and this is the one that reveals the invisibility curtain. He rides his way back, and Libby jump scares him. Funny enough, in this episode, she says she's never seen the building before, probably because it's in the middle of some random-ass lot. Also because the mutant just started existing yesterday. They make it through the curtain, Skipper gets zapped by the comic beam. There's nothing much new to cover here, but you can at least look at this amazing green screen and the building that looks right out of Garden of Banban. The elevator crashes, opens to the basement, and there's this constant high-tech warbling happening. Skipper finds the bright white room full of the sketch folders and even finds himself, until... So yeah, that was already the end of part 1, and the mutant attacking him was just a cardboard cutout that Libby found. When he turns around, all the folders are gone. The cutout's eyes glow for some reason, and the kids go home. A clear hint that Skipper's a comic book character appears when at dinner, he starts seeing his dad through dots. The transition from real to ink seems to give Skipper a fever as well, and the new issue arrives revealing the "only the boy can save me now" line. Without even waiting for tomorrow, he takes the bus to the HQ, and the driver is quite threatening.
Gotta be careful with those things. They can warp your mind.
Oh, it's the mutant. Seems like he can teleport too to get from there back to his lair. Skipper passes through the maniacal laughter into the elevator. There's just a random fog machine here to the left. And oh my goodness, the Galloping Gazelle! As you might be able to tell, he's played by Adam West, best known for being Batman in the 60s and the Mayor in Family Guy. R.I.P., man. As expected, we get some goofy superhero hijinks.
We only have to save the planet.
And Gazelle decides to sit in this chair, which is actually the mutant in disguise. In response, Gazelle starts doing a tornado spin for no reason, and the mutant trips him up. This is when he realizes, man, mutant's right. I'm too old for this shit. And he leaves. Looks pretty good for a guy in his late 60s, though. Now alone, Skipper opens the door to find Libby, but the mutant's gone. Yeah, he immediately reveals the Libby twist, and the comic book twist gets revealed. Scott Wickware does a great job portraying the mutant's comically evilness. Skipper does his own weird-ass laugh. But he's still not really interested in comics anymore in the morning. Mom goes to wash this ink off Skipper's hands, but then...
Elastic boy? Stretch it!
What an ending, I'd say. Gotta give him credit for spending the budget on a costume for a seconds-long shot at the end. Just like the book, though, I skipped a lot of extra unnecessary stuff. With 2 episodes, much more was faithfully kept, so other than the striking visuals and new additions, there isn't really much to cover. Mitzi's absent, Wilson's just as useless, and Libby is way too obviously in disguise. All in all, though, it's okay. So did that book make you fear the powers of the masked mutant? Is your friend actually a middle-aged man in disguise? More horrors await 2 weeks when we check out My Hairiest Adventure.